when did you know, how can I get involved with this? How can I do this for a living?
Um, I think that first spark started off with my buddy from high school. Because we started with the WWE games and the pay-per-views.
Yep.
So every pay-per-view, my buddy would call me up, hey man, we're having a pay-per-view party, just come over. So we all pitch in for the pay-per-view and beer and pizza and whatever, and we just kind of all hang out and just watch the pay-per-views. But then eventually my buddy and I had this rivalry. Every time a new WWE game or wrestling game would come out, we'd like make our personas. And that's kind of where it started as a this weird. I know like some fans probably there's like those internet federations where people talk trash in
Mhm.
between or whatever, promo stuff like that. It's pretty much how it started. I even had like us going back and forth on the internet on old Twitter and Facebook. It was really dumb, but it was just fun for all of us, kind of like talking trash. And then we kind of talked about it because a buddy of mine moved to Florida, and he's like, "Hey, I'm in Florida. I'm near one of the training centers. I almost moved in with him
Mm.
and the family. He's like, I want to go train. Would you be interested? Hey, come down. We can go training. This is when they do training." And he brought it up. I'm like, fantastic. That sounds cool. And then earlier than that, I used to live in New York, and there was like a wrestling school nearby where I lived, and apparently it was headed by Doink the Clown and a couple of other
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it just the opportunities just kept coming up. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you could be doing this. I'm like, I didn't do it because life got in the way or other things happened, but it just for some reason it just kept falling in my lap. Hey, this, and then
Yeah.
eventually, I was in a bad situation at the time. Unfortunately, I was
Mm.
homeless and dealing with a lot of personal issues. It's a really dark time in my life. And a friend, one of my best friends in the area, found out about my situation, and they kind of like, hey, you're in a shitty situation. We can't have you be in that situation. Why don't you move down with us? We'll, get you back on your feet. And I lived with them for a couple of years, and they were indie wrestlers. And I was kind of like part of the crew, ring crew and all that. And it just kind of evolved from there. And they would, teach me how to take bumps and go from there. And then eventually, I was told about, the schools and the proper way to learn. And I remember doing a couple shows and learning bumps and being taught by everybody there.
Mhm.
This is a great kid. He's still learning, paying his dues. Let's teach him a couple stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of learned a little bit from show for show until I like to call him my wrestling uncle. Huckabee told me, hey, you need to go to Firestar. You need to go to these places. And that's what I did. I went to Firestar. I learned a bit from Cozone and the crew there, and it just blew up from there. It's just been crazy.
Yeah. I mean, being homeless, that's horrible,
It was rough. It was about a year or two. Just it took a lot of growth and dealing with my demons and um, coming to terms with a lot of stuff. A lot of healing between my family and I. That I what can I say? It was kind of rough there uh, between the family, but a lot of that healing came through that. To the point where I know that if anything were to go wrong, I know my family has my back, and it was quite the learning experience of trying to do stuff on my own.
Yeah. I mean, what stuff did you take away from that period of time?
Um, hmm, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I learned a lot. There, if I could be honest, I'm still kind of healing for some of this stuff during that time period because it was such a lot going on.
Yeah.
um, but that you're not alone. You're never alone. There's always somebody out there, and that regardless whatever your head is telling you, there's people that love you. There's reasons to stick around, and it's not as dark as it seems. And wrestling kind of helped me with that too. It became my therapy. So I would go to shows, and uh it would be kind of my way of not hurting myself, but kind of like going through the pains physically to kind of
Hmm.
deal with it. It was the adrenaline rush. It was the the intensity of everything. So taking those bumps and learning how to do these things and being stretched out and taught everything
Yeah, I mean, they're
kind of
making it
helped
work.
me. Yeah, it put me through the work. It put me through the process, and that kind of helped me. Like if I could get through this and get through these physical pains, I can try to get through these emotional and mental
Yeah.
stuff that I'm
You
dealing with.
Yeah, you can get through anything, if you just put yourself out there, really try your hardest to, put in the work. And I mean, being a pro wrestler, I mean, that's not easy at all
It's
because you
it's not. The training is intense. The bumps are intense. They tell you the statistics like every bump is like being a 30-mile-per-hour car crash
Mhm.
every time. You're putting your body through stress, um, and you're learning how to do it properly and land properly, so you're not putting that much damage on your body. But yeah, it was intense. It still is, because it's more than just being in ring shape. You also have to be mentally prepared for everything and emotionally prepared for everything. It helped build me up, again, so to speak.
Yeah. And you met a lot of people, I'm sure, during the training.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how it happened because the whole I guess I'll just throw everything out on the table. Like I was homeless at the time, and and there were times where I had to sleep at my job, um, you know, so I could make it to work in time because I knew if I went home or I got a ride, there was no one's going to make it in time. So um, now that people knew, but I was like sleeping like behind the stairs behind my store at one point. So I'd wake up, go get my coffee, and open up the store. Um, what I didn't know is that one of the guys working at the mall was an indie wrestler, and I didn't believe him. So we just start talking wrestling, and he's like, "Yeah, why don't you come to one of my shows?" I'm like, "What do you mean one of your shows?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm an indie wrestler. On the weekends and whatnot. Like I do this, and then this is my job. It helps support this." I'm like, "Get the freak out of here, whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, no, 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 come out." I'm like, "All right, sure, okay, whatever." And his name, he kind of mentored me a little bit, kind of like teaching me the ropes. This is what happens behind the scenes. This is how it works. This is how, just everything between starting a match. And he kind of like gave me my homework. Hey, you need to watch Dean Malenko. Hey, you need to watch Eddie. You need to watch, uh, you know, uh, Carlos Colon. You need to watch, these other big names, and you need to watch it like 3 times. You need to watch the first guy, watch the second guy, watch the ref, and then come back and tell me. Like he'll give me like everything to do like every weekend or every week, like every day. Like who'd you watch today? And
Study tape.
yeah, pretty much. And I didn't realize what he was doing until like now. Like oh, I get it now. It was like the aha moment. Um, so he was kind of more luchador style. Cyclone Latino is his name. Um, he had to take a break a couple of times, and because a little life gets in the way and other stuff. But the fact that he kind of took me under his tutelage and took me to shows and introduced me into this crazy world, um, was amazing. And he could tell, like the first show he took me to, my eyes just kind of lit up. Like he's like, I see that. I see what you're thinking, and let's get your manager license first and go from there because you have to get a license in Virginia and all that. Um, and we'll talk about it, and I'll teach you more. And from that first show, I was just hooked. My first indie show was just amazing. The crowd interaction, the how everybody interacted with the fans and the heels and the baby faces and all that. And that's where I ended up meeting my friends, Natalina Corvino and Thomas Draven. That's how I get introduced to them. And like he told me, like, watch these guys. So he told me to watch these people and these people. And I was a fan. I was fanboying the entire time. Like I get to meet these guys, I get to watch their matches, and it was just an amazing experience. And I was hooked. I was hooked ever since.